Welcome back to Simplifying the State, the podcast where we break down politics so you don't have to try to figure out why the U.S. seems to be getting into piracy by boarding a Venezuelan oil tanker and keeping the oil. As always, I'm Adam Watson.
I'm Nicholas Perrin.
And I'm Drew Garfinkel.
All right. Now, before we start, if you would be so kind as to rate us and follow the podcast wherever you're listening, and to share it with anyone you think would enjoy it, such as friends or family. All right. So today we're going to be talking about sort of where U.S. National security is. It's not a super fun topic, but I think it's a really important one that we should talk about, and sort of just what the U.S. role in the world sort of is today.
So like our role in foreign affairs?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So the first thing I sort of wanted to talk about that I was thinking of when we were talking about discussing this was Trump put out like some new national security strategy. In it, there was a lot of departure from what we usually do in terms of national security. I mean, withdrawing from the world stage, he said we need to stop being the world's police force. He called for sort of pulling back from Europe, saying they need to be more responsible for their own security, reestablishing diplomacy with Russia. He said the war in Ukraine needs to end, but he didn't specify that he would prefer a Ukraine victory. And then also he said that Europe, quote, threatens civilizational erasure, which is a right-wing talking point. And he said that that is due to immigration and stuff like that. So what do you guys think that could mean for like U.S. policy regarding Europe?
So we've been quite involved in world affairs since, I don't even know, but we were kind of focused on ourselves for a while. Then since, I'm not going to say time period, but for a while, we've been very like international globalization focused. And there's some merit to focusing on yourself in your own country, which I think that's what a lot of people want to see is focusing on US. Don't send $1 billion to Ukraine. And so going back to the original question, I think there's some merit behind it. I don't know how this is going to look, though. What do you think, Nicholas?
Well, to me, like what you said, the U.S. has definitely stepped away from European affairs in large parts. Of course, the U.S. is still like pretty intertwined, especially with the war in Ukraine right now, or really any war across the world, but specifically in Europe's case. I mean, the war in Ukraine, they've been like the main negotiator of peace terms between Ukraine and Russia. And like what Adam said, when Trump did not specify that he would prefer a Ukrainian victory, he does genuinely seem like he wants the war to end. But I don't, based on like past concessions that we've seen him give, and even like more modern ones to Russia, it's pretty clear that he doesn't care how much it takes. He just wants, the war to end so he can look good, or people stop dying, or whatever number of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, based on the peace plan, the recent peace plan, it was like Ukraine has to give up a certain amount of territory, and then also they have to reduce the scale of their armed forces, which I don't know how that works because like they were the one who was invaded. So I don't know why they would have to reduce their military. But yeah, it sort of seems like the main goal of the U.S. now when it comes to Ukraine is to end the war regardless of who wins. Like, it seems like they just want to end the war and are not particularly interested in defending Ukrainian sovereignty or ensuring that Ukraine does not lose land. That seems to no longer be a top priority. And I mean, I'm assuming they're getting a lot of pressure from the public, like you said, Drew, because of the cost. And regardless of how important something is, a lot of people do not want to have their tax dollars spent on foreign conflicts, regardless of the specifics, because the specifics are basically that we're buying new weapons and giving the old weapons to Ukraine. But yeah, a lot of people do not want to see their tax dollars spent on foreign conflicts.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I'm going to pose a question. Do you think we have an obligation to help Ukraine? This topic hits close to home. My mom's side of the family is from Ukraine, so I'm obviously in support of it. But do you think like we have a duty to protect Ukraine? Do you think that's part of what it is to be in the US?
I think that there are two reasons that we should be defending Ukraine, and there are two very big reasons. The first one is from a more strategic point of view, and that is that so Russia, specifically Putin, seems to be determined on rebuilding some kind of Russian empire, whether that be from the Soviet days or the Tsar days or whatever. And I don't know how many people are familiar with geography and history, but the old Soviet Union and the old Russian Empire did not just include Ukraine. It included most of Eastern Europe, and pretty much every Eastern European country is in NATO. So to rebuild that empire, he would require some kind of NATO country. And if he is sort of beaten back and if his military is basically dismantled in Ukraine, the threat of him invading a NATO country is reduced. And if he invades a NATO country, then because of Article 4 or Article 5, we have to go in and support that NATO country and defend them against an attack. The second reason is a more idealistic point of view, in that we should be defending democracy and we should be standing up to authoritarianism and dictatorship and just the violation of international law. That's what I think about this.
Yeah, that second answer was kind of what I was looking for. I agree. Yeah, what do you think, Nicholas?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with both points that Adam made, but I think just to offer the other point of the isolationist point of view, I don't agree with that, but it's good to, voice other people's opinions anyway.
Definitely.
So from their point of view, even though it is old and used equipment, we are still sending a bunch of material aid to Ukraine that could, otherwise be for example, sold to other countries. So there's a little bit of net loss when it comes to that from a point of view. And also from their point of view, if the government is devoting their focus to a foreign country and not their own country, especially with Trump's America First policy, it seems kind of disingenuous to them if the person that they supported to serve America and America First is not actually but America
the
First,
people? The people of America?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. There was another part of the national security strategy. It named several different areas of focus, but it referenced China in a different way than has been previously referenced. So it focused more so on sort of working with China, and it did mention that a secure Taiwan would be beneficial to U.S. foreign policy, but it seemed a lot less harsh on China. It seemed to view China in less of the light of a military threat and more in the light of a possible ally. So I'm wondering, what do you guys think about the possible departure from sort of China being a potential adversary?
You're talking about some document or announcement? What's this from?
Yeah. So it is mandated by Congress that every president put out a national security strategy. The one I'm referencing, it was Trump's. It was released, I think, last week. Basically, it sets out the administration's national security objectives for their term, priorities, etc., etc. So that's what I'm referencing when I say that document.
So my opinion on just stuff like this, it's a good idea to have as many friends as possible. Just in general. The less enemies you have, it can be better for you. And I see this going either way, but I do see some potential benefits down the line. I don't want to say anything too extreme because I have no clue how that play out. But for example, we buy so much from China and sell it for cheap in the US, made in China stickers on everything. Right?
Yeah. I mean, they're definitely a giant trading partner.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with your point. I think it is important that we should be focusing on diplomacy and keep the arms race to a minimum for, I think, a bunch of reasons. But I also think that you can be diplomatic with somebody. You can have diplomatic relations with a country. But I do think that China is not a country we should be viewing as an ally, simply because I think their ideology is so much different from ours. Like, they have no democracy. They have virtually no free expression, free speech, anything like that. What they're
Yeah.
doing with the Uyghurs, that's definitely something that they should not be doing.
It'd be going against American values.
Yeah, basically that. I mean, I think you can avoid an arms race and, be diplomatically neutral, but I don't think we should be trying to pursue some kind of new U.S.-China strong friendship alliance, whatever.
Yeah, I didn't think about that aspect. Like, I kind of changed my opinion based on that. But I still think some diplomacy can never be a bad thing. What do you think, Nicholas?
I mean, yeah, I agree with Adam on this. I think it's contentious because if we were to pursue like a friendly foreign policy, then we'd be like, potentially throwing away some of our values and supporting a genocidal state. I'll just say it. But, yeah, it'll be throwing away a giant trading partner.
Yeah. So in the strategy, it seems to call for a ramping down of presence in the Middle East and stuff like that. So I just wanted to get your guys' quick takes on that.
So going back to like focusing on America, focusing on ourselves is good, but then like pulling out of Afghanistan, for example, that was a disaster, right? We can all agree on that.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that could go. It depends on what actions we take in the Middle East, or we could see a repeat of that.
That has me a little nervous because there are some, like, I think there are still some U.S. troops stationed in, like, northeastern Syria to protect, like, the Kurdish state there. Is that right?
Yeah. I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and if things start to go wrong there, if the new Syrian government gets like a little forceful with reintegration, or if terrorist groups start popping up and attacking there more, or if Turkey attacks the Kurdish state there, it could collapse, and it's like a very healthy democracy. So yeah, that has me worried, but it is, again, from the isolationist standpoint, it's a decent idea. Less risk of losing people.
Yeah, I mean, I think just overall, if we want to look at where U.S. foreign policy is now compared to where it was 5 or 10 years ago, I think there has definitely been a massive withdrawal of the United States from the world stage. And I think that can come with some positives, but also a lot of consequences. I mean, we fought 2 world wars to prevent a dictatorship in Europe, and now we seem to be pulling back from Europe at the very moment when there is a new dictator trying to take over parts of Europe. I mean, we have spent a good chunk of time and money building up alliances in the Indo-Pacific region to possibly combat China if it sought to expand its influence by possibly taking over Taiwan or things like that. But I mean, to Nicholas's point of looking at it from the other side's point of view, I do think that this could come with some benefits. We could see possibly this saving us some money. It also could negate the risk of us going to war. But yeah, those are just some of the positives that I see and some of the consequences I see from this sort of shift.
I think that like we, at least I feel, often overlook is that we're only like, 35-ish years after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War. So like that pulling away from everything has been a response to like being active in the world for, I don't know, like 60 years straight. It's probably closer to 80. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, I think a lot of people are tired of a lot of, U.S. engagement in foreign affairs in general.
All right. Okay, thanks for listening to Simplifying the State. We'll be back next week with our next episode. Make sure to follow the podcast. Make sure to follow us on Instagram. Make sure to rate it, etc. And see you guys next time.